Deliberation. After steady deliberation. I'm not going to be rushed into making a difficult decision.
President Bush speaking on Wednesday, it's already clear he's not going to be rushed into a decision. As he just said, a policy speech rumored to be coming this coming week has been pushed back until early into the new year. But how will any plans survive in post-election Washington? Can they survive? Joining us now to discuss this and more, two guests. Former White House Chief of Staff in the Bill Clinton administration, John Podesta. He's currently the president of the Center for American Progress here in Washington. And Danielle Pletka, Vice President for Foreign and Defense Policy Studies at the American Enterprise Institute, a think tank here in Washington as well. Guys, thanks very much for coming in. Is Iraq falling apart, Danielle?
I don't think Iraq is falling apart, but there's clearly an enormous amount of chaos that needs to be brought under control, and we need to show some leadership in doing it. And
you think it still can be, the victory that the president talks about can be achieved, a democratic, stable Iraq at peace amongst itself with its neighbors?
That sounds lovely. I think it is achievable. I don't think it's achievable quickly. I don't think it's as achievable as we thought it was, as fast as we thought it would be. But yes, I believe Iraq can be stabilized. I believe Iraq is already democratic. And I believe that we can do a great deal more if we show the right kind of leadership and initiative. That's what's been missing.
How much longer do you think? It's been 3.5, it's in its fourth year now. How much longer is it going to take?
I don't hold with these ideas that this is our last chance. Do you know how many last chances we've had already? There's no such thing as a last chance. What there is changing the strategy and adapting to ensure that we are on top of the situation. That's what we have failed to do over the last couple of years. That's what the president needs to do now. If he needs to take an extra month, that's right. But let's get it right this time.
So what do you think? Another 5 months, 6 months, 7 months to turn things around? Or 5, 10 years?
I think with the right ideas and the right leadership, the president can turn things around in Iraq within a year. Whether Iraq will be a Jeffersonian democracy in a year, no, I doubt that. I think we're going to look at 5 to 10 years of serious effort on our part.
What do you think, John?
Well, I think that the Iraqi study group put it right. It's grave and deteriorating, and I think we're on a downhill slide in Iraq, and I think that until the president changes his strategy and changes his course, we're going to continue on that downhill slide, and the chaos will continue.
Here's what retired U.S. Army General Barry McCaffrey wrote in the Washington Post this week. He said, "We could immediately and totally withdraw. The resulting civil war would probably turn Iraq into a humanitarian disaster and might well draw in the Iranians and the Syrians. It would also deeply threaten the safety and stability of our allies and neighboring countries." You agree with his assessment?
Well, I think no one's calling for an immediate withdrawal. The question is, what is the overall strategy? Are we going to begin to reduce the U.S. footprint there? We're there with 150,000 troops. Last summer, we were told that we need to just surge in Baghdad and it'll reduce the level of violence. We added 7,000 more troops. The violence went up. I think that the alternative to immediate withdrawal is not adding more troops in Iraq. That's not a viable solution.
We heard from several Democrats, including Carl Levin, the incoming chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, to start a withdrawal, a significant withdrawal, within 4 to 6 months.
I think that the question there, I think everyone's focused on the training mission, trying to get Iraqi forces to take over the security circumstances in Iraq. But the real question isn't so much training. There are now 300,000 Iraqi troops trained. It's really a question of motivation. That's going to take a political process, and the pressure needs to put on the Iraqis to get to a circumstance where they have to, take up and settle their differences. And the only way that's going to happen, I think, is if the U.S. doesn't continue to kind of hold their coat and do the fighting.
That was the assessment in the Iraq study group as well. Among other things, it said this, Danielle. It said 79% of Iraqis have a mostly negative view of the influence that the United States has in their country. 61% of Iraqis approve of attacks on U.S.-led forces. If Iraqis continue to perceive Americans as representing an occupying force, the United States could become its own worst enemy in a land it liberated from tyranny. Do you agree with that assessment of the Iraq Study Group?
I agree with very little that the Iraq Study Group came out with. I think that the reason that Iraqis are frustrated with the United States is because we are not winning. And not only are we not winning, but they are hearing from more and more people in the United States that we don't really care about winning. That in fact what we want to do is find either a quick way or a short way or a cheating way to get out, whether it's by increasing our emphasis on training or it's by abusing the daylights out of the Iraqi politicians, suggesting that somehow they haven't done enough, they're not deserving of our goodwill, America doesn't really have interest here, let's just get out. That, for me, is what is really demoralizing the Iraqi people. What they want to see is that we have control of the situation, that we are getting a handle on delivering security. And that's what we must do sooner rather than later.
Because the American people voted in November, and Iraq was a dominant issue, and clearly the American public is frustrated. In the low 20s, they think the president is doing a good job handling the situation in Iraq. The American people, at least based on the polls, based on the elections, would like to see that U.S. military presence in Iraq begin to go down rapidly.
I don't think the American people have been given a very good choice. What they've been told over the last couple of years is, no, we're really trying to win, let's stay the course, let's do the same thing. I don't think that they believe the president has a handle on the situation. They don't believe that the president knows what it takes to win. And it is his job, if he really wants to win in Iraq. Hang on a second, John. It is his job to show that leadership and to use the bully pulpit of the presidency to, in fact, show the American people that we do need to win and what's at stake. You can't disagree that there's a lot at stake here.
The one thing I think that we can agree on is that the president doesn't know how to win or how to achieve stability in Iraq.
No, that's
a place.
I didn't
that's
say
a place
that.
that maybe we can find agreement. And I think the American public gets that. 2/3 of them have a sense that this is clearly not working. They want a different course, and that we need to press ahead with a different course. I think we have a strong disagreement about which direction that ought to go in. And I would remind Danielle and others who are arguing for a bump up in the number of troops there to go back and look at what they predicted in the past when those kinds of things would happen. It's just a year ago in December that the elections took place, that the president put out with great fanfare his new plan for quote unquote winning the war in Iraq. Now what we need to get to is a stabilized Iraq, a stabilized region, and adding more troops isn't going to do that.
We heard from General Colin Powell today, the former Secretary of State, retired chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States. He said earlier today he's not convinced, based on what he knows, and clearly he knows a lot about this situation, that another 20,000, 30,000 more U.S. troops right now would make much of a difference.
Well, AI put out a plan this week, along with General Jack Keane, former 3-star Vice Chairman, Chief of Staff of the Army, to suggest exactly what it is we would need to do. A bump up in troops isn't enough. This has not worked. You can't put an extra 10,000 guys inside Baghdad and say, here, now we're going to win, and not do what it takes. You've got to take the neighborhoods, you've got to clear them, but you've also got to keep them. What we've been doing is we've been taking neighborhoods, clearing out the bad guys, and then checking out. The bad guys surge in from right behind us, and nothing has changed. That is meaningless sacrifice.
So who do you blame for that failure, for that strategic blunder?
Well, I think
the President of the United States?
Ultimately, of course, you have to blame the President of the United States, but frankly, the commanders on the ground take a lot of responsibility.
Should
and I think General Casey needs to be switched out. I think that they need to make some serious changes, because that is going to be a signal that they get that they haven't been doing what they need to do. And not only that, they haven't even been doing what John suggests the President's been saying. They haven't been following a strategy. They've got to do that.
We're going to take a quick break, but we have a lot more to talk about. So stay with us. John Podesta, Danielle Pletka, they're not going anywhere. When we come back, their analysis on the political fallout from Iraq. Also,